Was Bryan Kohberger watching the victims from their backyard? I have long heard that Kaylee Goncalves was concerned about having a stalker. In fact, the first time I went to her parents' house shortly after the murders and interviewed them, that was one of the first things they brought up, that she was worried about a stalker. Well, there are new police reports that I'm going to go through in this episode that detail why her friends were also concerned. Also, in these new reports, there was a close call. They almost cleaned out the house at 1122 King Road, law enforcement, before it was officially cleared. I'm going over all the new reports that have come out since the gag order ended in this edition of Bryan Enton Investigates. Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my podcast. Really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. You're probably wondering why I'm sitting in a bed. I'm actually in a hotel room. This is where I am a lot of the time during the week, traveling around doing my stories. And oftentimes I will lay out court documents to sort of go through them on the bed just because I can spread them out. I used to do the same thing when I was in college with my homework. And I was going through all of the Bryan Kohberger documents that have been released since the gag order was over with. And I had them laid out on the bed, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for the podcast and realized like I might as well just do the podcast in the bed too, since I already have everything laid out and whatever. Hopefully you guys won't judge me and you'll kind of get it. So in this episode, I'm going to go through all of the new documents that have been released, not only from Moscow PD, but also some new documents out of Pullman, Washington, and things that I noticed that other people haven't really been picking up on. I think I've got an interesting perspective because I spent so much time in Idaho from the beginning. So a lot of this stuff is bringing back memories to things that I saw while I was there, and it's sort of helping to piece all of this together. I want to start with a ton of police reports that I found that have to do with whether or not Kaylee Goncalves had a stalker and whether or not Bryan Kohberger was actually lurking around the house at 1122 King Road before the murders. Now, keep in mind, prosecutors have said very clearly that they don't have any evidence that Kohberger was stalking the victims or that even really knew the victims before. But since early on when I started covering the story, there had been reports from family and friends of Kaylee's that she was nervous about being stalked and that she thought that she may have been being stalked. And even I was thinking back after reading these reports, the first time that I went to the Goncalves' house in Coeur d'Alene. They live in Coeur d'Alene, so it's a bit of a drive outside Moscow. And the first time I went there, which was well before Bryan Kohberger was arrested, this was pretty soon after the murders, I remember her parents and her sister telling me that they thought that Kaylee had told them that she was worried about a stalker that early on. So it was interesting reading these reports. I'm going to read them to you now. These are from friends of Kaylee's. This is from one of the roommates, and also this is from Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, Jack. I'm going to start though. This is from one of the roommates here. And this is, again, these are police reports and interviews that police were doing in the immediate days and weeks after the murders. So it kind of takes us back to that time. This is November 13th, 2022. This is when the names are blacked out, so I can't be positive, but sort of piecing the information together. This is interviewing one of the surviving roommates. And I'm just going to say blank because a lot of these are blank and still blacked out. But it says, blank talked about an incident with Kaylee, who stated about a month ago that she saw an unknown male up above their house to the south who was staring at her when she took Murphy out to go potty. Blank stated Kaylee broke up with her longtime boyfriend about 3 months ago because she was planning on moving to Texas. Blank could not provide me with anything else at this time, but stated about a month ago she saw an unknown male up above their house to the south who was staring at her when she took Murphy out to go potty. Now, let me describe the house for you again. In front of the house, there's obviously, there's apartments, like sort of lower duplex type things. If you're looking at the front of the house to the left, there's a bigger apartment building and a parking lot behind that. But directly behind the house, and keep this in mind as I continue to read you these reports, behind the house there is nothing but a wooded area. There's a backyard and a wooded area. And up behind that wooded area is a neighborhood. And I explore that area a lot because I was there every day just trying to piece together what happened. And there's a little trail that goes through the wooded area, but it's not a trail that's used very much. And the wooded area again goes up to the houses behind the neighborhood that's up behind. Where the house is at 1122 King Road and the surrounding apartments and duplexes, it's mostly students. I would almost say all students that live right there. But up in that neighborhood behind, the sense that I got, it's a little bit more of an upscale neighborhood. It just had a bit more of an adult feel to it. So I don't get the sense that there were a lot of students walking up behind the house through the woods up to that bigger neighborhood behind. There was really no reason to walk through those woods. So keep that in mind as you're going to hear people saying that Kaylee saw someone in that wooded area behind. This is from another friend. Blank stated several people, to include Goncalves and Blank, were on the back patio. They were talking about a party that they went to. Again, this is obviously before the murders. During the party, Goncalves' dog Murphy was also present. Blank stated Murphy ran up into the bushes behind the house on several occasions and would not return when called. Blank stated they called Murphy numerous times before he would come back. Blank told me the group eventually went inside and shut the door. This was the only occurrence Blank was present for, but told me Blank remembered more similar occasions. I called Blank, referencing these occasions. Blank also related the occasion on her birthday and added it was unlike Murphy to not immediately return home when called, which is the reason she and Goncalves were concerned about someone being behind the house when Murphy would behave in this manner. Blank told me about another occasion on October 29th, 2022, during which she was at 1122 King Road for a Halloween party. Blank told me Mogan, Goncalves, Kernodle, and Chapin were all present at the party. During the party, Blank stated the group gathered on the back patio once again, and Murphy began to run into the wood line behind the house and not come back. Blank told me they heard noises too. She described these noises as similar to what it would sound like if someone was moving through the woods on foot. This occasion took place midday, and they did not see anyone behind the house. However, Murphy's behavior and the noises caused them to go inside and close the door. The last occasion, Blank remembered, took place approximately 2 weeks prior to the homicides. Blank stated Murphy displayed similar behavior of running into the woods and not coming back when called. Blank also recalled an occurrence during this time frame, exact date unknown, wherein she and Goncalves returned to 1122 King Road and found the rear sliding door standing open and Murphy was missing. Blank stated they had to go out and look for Murphy after they found the door open. So what I've been told is that Murphy would not want to run away from Kaylee or from the house. That wasn't his personality, and that's one of the reasons this stood out to so many of the friends, is why was Murphy going up into the woods and not coming back, especially when they heard someone up there. This is now from another friend, okay? Blank then, this is a different friend. Blank then told me where she had heard from others that Kaylee had seen some random guy behind the house when she took Murphy out to go pee. Blank also followed her out of the store, and she thought he tried to get into her car. Blank was not sure for sure who had heard this. The grammar is weird. Who had heard this from, but either Blank or Blank could not tell me more. So this is again saying that saw a random guy out behind the house. This report is from Jack. So this is Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, Jack. Police describe him as the ex-boyfriend. You know, they seemed like they were kind of in between boyfriend and ex-boyfriend, but they actually interviewed Jack about some of these things. I'm going to read you this full police report. This is when they interviewed Jack, and he also talks about the possibility of a stalker. On November 13th, 2022, at approximately 14:37 hours, I interviewed Blank, which I know to be Jack, at the Moscow Police Department, reference the quadruple homicide which occurred at 1122 King Road. Blank consented to have his phone forensically searched and provided me with his cell phone at the beginning of the interview. I asked Blank to tell me about his day on November 12th, 2022. Blank stated he worked blank and worked from 1400 hours to 2210 hours on November 12th, 2022. Blank stated he left his work and dropped off some food for a friend working at the Corner Club. Blank stated he went home. He also lived on King Road, then returned to the Corner Club around 2300 hours, a different place on King Road. Blank stated he saw Goncalves at the Corner Club and spoke to her briefly. Blank stated he left the Corner Club, but was unsure if Goncalves left before or after him. Blank stated he went to bed when he got home. When Blank awoke, he told me he saw commotion down the street at 1122 King Road, visible from his residence. So it goes on to talk about sort of, we know what happened next. He found out what was going on down there and was hearing from other roommates. But this is the part that I thought was interesting in relation to whether or not someone was stalking the house. I asked Blank if he noticed or heard anything suspicious anytime recently. Blank stated he saw a dark gold minivan backing up King Road approximately 1 or 2 months prior. Blank stated he did not remember any other suspicious circumstances. Blank did add Goncalves would call him on occasion when she was walking down home alone or when she was feeling sketched out. That's how she described it, sketched out. Blank stated there were people coming in and out of 1122 King Road frequently, and more people knew the code to their house than they probably should have. Blank stated he was not sure if the residents regularly locked the rear building glass door. Blank also told me he and Goncalves owned a dog, golden doodle named Murphy, with Goncalves. He also told me Goncalves was taking the dog out sometime in the past when Goncalves saw a shadowy figure behind the house. So this time it's described as a shadowy figure behind the house. Now again, remember, behind the house is that wooded area. Next to the house would be the bigger apartment building. In front of the house would be the duplexes, but behind the house is just that wooded area. So she said she saw a shadowy figure behind the house. Blank stated nothing else came out of the incident. I asked Blank about his relationship with Goncalves. He told me that they had dated for approximately 5 years and broke up several months prior due to a loss of spark coupled with Goncalves leaving for a job in Texas. Blank stated there wasn't conflict and the breakup was mutual. I asked Blank if there was anyone who flirted with Goncalves. Blank stated there was a male by the name of Blank who often flirted with Goncalves. Blank did not know any past stalking incidents, nor did he know who would have committed the murders. I asked Blank about his conversation with Goncalves at the Corner Club. He said the conversation was short but normal. Blank did not have any further information for me during this interview, so I concluded my interview with Blank. And again, he said that Goncalves owned a dog, a golden doodle named Murphy, and that when Goncalves was taking the dog out sometime in the past, Goncalves saw a shadowy figure behind the house. Now, what's interesting about Jack, and I don't think I've shared this story before, is you guys remember when right after the murders, before Bryan Kohberger was arrested, when everyone thought police knew nothing, and there was just this frantic atmosphere in Moscow, especially. A lot of the college kids had gone home. People didn't feel safe in town. People were nervous, and people were pointing fingers at people associated with the victims, whether it be friends or people that they went to school with. There was this whole list of people on social media who, like sleuths, were claiming were involved. And one of those people was Jack. Obviously, maybe because he was the ex-boyfriend. Now, Jack obviously did nothing wrong. Good guy, just terrible that he had to go through that time with everybody in the comments saying things. But this is the part that I haven't shared. So when I went to the Goncalves' house one of the first times after the murders, but before the arrest of Bryan Kohberger, I was going there to talk to them about some things, do another interview. And when I got there, Jack was actually at the house. And it was always very sad going to the house. It still is. But then especially, not only sad, but there was a nervous energy because the killer hadn't been caught. So when you would go in the front door, there was always a lot of family and friends around. They were all supporting the Goncalveses. And I remember back where the kitchen was, I saw Jack. And I actually said to Kaylee's sister, "Oh, Jack is here." And I was sort of thinking like, wow, he's here. And there's all this stuff going on social media. And they loved Jack. I mean, Jack was like a part of the family. And from very early on, they were not suspicious of Jack. And I just always thought that was interesting. You had the internet world going crazy, but the family loved Jack. And he was even in their house throughout all of that. So that was kind of an interesting time. But back to these reports, we may never know if Kaylee Goncalves had a stalker, if Bryan Kohberger was stalking the house. Was he possibly stalking one of the other roommates? We'll probably never know. I mean, the prosecution has said they don't have enough evidence to say that. They made clear they don't even know if Bryan Kohberger had a connection to the roommates. They've never seen any evidence. So we may never know. But it is just interesting looking through these reports, the coincidences, or are they coincidences, that so many people in Kaylee's life after the murders came forward and said, wait a minute, she did tell me this time, or she did tell me that time. And you know how it is, like, you remember certain things that stand out to you. The fact that she was saying she saw a shadowy figure in the wooded area behind the house. Again, we may never know the significance of it, but I found those points to be really, really interesting in the reports. Okay, moving on to something else that I thought was interesting, the actual house at 1122 King Road. You remember they tore the house down. Basically, the owner of the rental house gifted it to the university, and the university ended up tearing the house down, even when they thought there was going to be a trial, which caused a lot of people to be angry, including some of the victims' families, because oftentimes in a trial like this, especially with the house that was as weird as that one with the 3 levels and part of it being set into the earth, you might want to do a jury walkthrough. That happens. For example, I covered the awful Parkland shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, the school shooting in Florida. What happened is, after the school shooting, and this was right on the campus of the high school, they closed off that building for years and kept it exactly the way it was after the shooting. I mean, there was blood all over the floors. They didn't change a thing. The books were still open. Everything was the same. They fenced it in. They put banners on the outside of the fencing, and the kids went back to school and had to look at that building every day. But they kept it there because they wanted it to be there for a jury walkthrough. And again, they did have a jury walkthrough there. They brought the jurors out there to see it. They eventually tore it down after Nicholas Cruz was convicted, the shooter, but they knew it was important. And same thing with the Murdaugh case. I was out there when they toured Moselle, his estate. They knew that the jury might want to see it, and they brought the jurors out there in vans. So people thought the same thing in Idaho, which is why they were so shocked when they decided to tear the house down. What I'm getting at is, and I've said this before, I think the prosecution in many ways did a great job and cared about the case, but I also think there was this feeling that they wanted to move on in Moscow. It's a college town. They're not used to the attention. They're not used to the fear. Again, a lot of the kids left campus after it happened. I think they didn't want that house to stay standing anymore. And it's a reminder of what happened. And I think they were premature in tearing it down. That's just my opinion. What I'm getting at is there were some other close calls and issues with the house where I think they moved too quickly because they wanted to move on. And this, I'm going to give you some examples, and these are in the police reports. These are things that I didn't know that are now coming to light in these police reports. This has to do with, well, let me just read it to you, and then I'll explain. On December 30th, 2022, at approximately 8:45 hours, disaster services responded to 1122 King Road to being cleaning the residents of biohazards and other chemicals used during the crime scene processing. This was a pre-arranged response. As members of disaster response were setting up their tents and barriers, I received a call from Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson. Mr. Thompson advised me that a judge's order had just been issued requesting all mitigation and cleanup be halted immediately. At that point, I instructed the disaster services crew members to stop. I confirmed that the door of the residence had not been opened and no one had altered the residence yet. Excuse me, it's really late. So what I found interesting here is you had a disaster services response company coming to do a biohazard clean. This was on December 30th, 2022. They were about to go in the house and clean the house when it just so happens the prosecutor called and said that there was a judge's order to halt it. They were so close to cleaning the house and possibly cleaning up evidence that they didn't want to clean up that early. And they almost did it. The cleaning service almost went in. If it hadn't been for Bill Thompson calling at the last moment, they would have gone inside, which I just thought was an interesting close call that I didn't know about until now. Another interesting thing that I noticed here, on January 5th, 2023, I learned from, this is the police officer writing this, I learned from Bill Thompson, per the recent signed court order to hold all evidence, blank items fell under that order. Thompson stated his office would contact blank and make arrangements to have blank items returned to MPD. So filling in the gaps here, what it seems like happened in this instance, which wasn't long after the cleaning crew showed up, is they gave away, they gave back some of the items in the house, probably to the victims' families, and didn't realize that it was too soon. And then had to go back and get those items back and bring them back into evidence, which could have been an issue, chain of custody, etc. Again, doesn't matter now. Bryan Kohberger admitted to the crimes. There's been a plea deal. Had there been a trial, something like this could have come up. And again, I just think it all goes back to what I was saying. I always felt like there was a rush to clean up the house, get things back to normal. They eventually tear down the house. And I think some of these reports sort of play into that, which I just thought was interesting. Last thing I'm going to get to here that I noticed in these new police reports that I don't think a lot of other people have picked up on is they talk a lot about when detectives went to and from the house. I was out there pretty much every day. And again, this is before Kohberger was arrested, and they would show up in the middle of the night sometimes or late at night to go in to get something, to do some kind of testing. They would never tell us what they were doing, but I would be out there late into the night just keeping an eye on things, and you would see these detectives come and going, and oftentimes I got it on video. A lot of those instances are now documented in these police reports, which is interesting for me. Maybe it's just me kind of, since I was out there, to go back and sort of cross-reference with the dates that I got video of the detectives going in and out. But there's something else referenced in here, and that is the day that the U-Haul showed up. And let me just explain this. So we were told that this was going to happen. There was finally a day when they were going to return the personal items of the victims to their family members. And this U-Haul, driven by Police Chief James Fry, he was actually driving the U-Haul, which was interesting because I never saw the police chief out there. I don't think besides that time, it was mostly just the detectives. The police chief showed up, back to the U-Haul Inn, and they began to take out the possessions of the victims. And like when you cover a story like this, most days, obviously it's emotional. I mean, there are times I was at the victim's house, families' houses, and there were emotional days, but a lot of days you just zero in on what you're doing. Because you're trying to get the job done and you're trying to keep up with the new information. And I'm calling the police, I'm calling the FBI, I'm going to the different locations, I'm going by the house to make sure I'm not missing anything new, I'm calling the police again. And you're sort of distracting yourself away from the sort of emotion of it when you're doing the job like that. But there are always moments where you can't help but the emotion will break in, and sometimes it's unexpected. And for me, I think back to this moment as one of those times. I was standing outside the house. The police chief showed up in the U-Haul. He was driving the U-Haul. He backed in, and then the officers just quietly began to remove the personal items that belonged to the victims. And when I say personal items, I mean it was Ethan Chapin's golf clubs. It was the makeup of the girl that the girls had. It was their bedding. It was their, pink pillows. It was their posters. It was pictures. It was things that we all had in college that I thought about. I mean, it was like the plastic drawers and shelving that you had when you were in college that you saw them pulling out. And it was just this really emotional moment where it became so clear that these were just these innocent kids. And everybody felt it. No one said a word. The police chief wasn't talking. The officers weren't talking as they carried the items out. The reporters and photographers weren't talking. We were all dead silent. And I think everybody just appreciated the gravity of the moment. When at one point the chief did kind of walk over to where we were standing, and I have the video on my phone still. This is what he said.
We're just trying to get stuff back to the family so that they can have some closure.
Okay. What did you guys kind of take out? Was it specific things the family wanted?
Some of the things that the family wanted, and just other belongings that were there.
And I missed the first statement you made, sir. What was that? We
just went in to gather belongings so that the family can have some of that stuff.
Yesterday you talked about, I can't imagine how difficult it is for you. Last time you guys were here, it was a horrendous crime scene. To have to go back into the house, so what was that like?
We have a job to do, and I said yesterday that we're going to do our job. We're going to do it to the best of our ability, and we owe this to the family, we owe this to the victims, we owe this to our community. So we're going to continue on, but we'd like to get going now so that we can...
Chief, just real quick, are there any updates today with the investigation that you can share?
At this point in time, I don't know that because I haven't been there, but I'll be there later, and maybe I can answer that question.
So it was an emotional moment, as you can imagine. But again, I bring that up because a lot of this is now documented in these police reports I'm going through. This is a report from one of the officers that he rented the U-Haul truck, and after loading the items into the truck, drove the U-Haul to the secure storage garage at the Moscow City shop. All listed above individuals unpacked the truck, those are all the officers, into the secured storage garage where they were kept prior to releasing them to family members. And the family members had actually told me that they went to that area, the secure area, to go pick up the items, which you can just imagine what that was like, picking up all the personal items. And then there was a time when they had to go pick up the cars. You know, Steve Goncalves told me about when he went and picked up Kaylee Goncalves' Land Rover, which is still in their driveway, by the way, the last time I was there. So that was an emotional day. This is also interesting from that same batch of reports. Ann Taylor actually requested that certain items be set aside and not returned, which is kind of interesting, wondering why these items, again, doesn't matter anymore now that it's over. But it was a handwritten note, pink and white blanket with red hearts, pink and white cloth, possibly used as a curtain or decoration, black and white Vans shoes, red and white shoes, black and white Converse shoes, all sorts of other stuff from the bedroom. Not sure why Ann Taylor was specifically interested in holding on to those items, but kind of interesting that they wanted those kept behind. Again, I don't know why, but all of these things are documented in all of these new police reports. And every time I go through them, there's something else that I noticed that I didn't before. I want to go through something else though. So we also got new reports from Pullman, Washington, which of course is where Bryan Kohberger lived. He lived in off-campus housing, graduate housing, right near Washington State University, which is like 20 minutes from Moscow. But these reports were just released by Pullman, Washington. And the reason that these are interesting is because these reports are specifically about when Bryan Kohberger was brought from Pennsylvania, where he was arrested outside his parents' house. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the reports. From Pennsylvania, where he was arrested at his parents' house, he was brought back to Pullman, Washington. Here we go. So let me kind of refresh your memory here. So he was arrested. He was interviewed, which we now know about, at the Pennsylvania State Police Barracks in Pennsylvania. He had his first appearance, which I raced to Pennsylvania when I got word he was arrested, got a tip. I was there for his first appearance in Pennsylvania, and then we knew that he was going to be flown back to Idaho. I at first assumed it was going to be like an FBI jet that they brought in to fly him back quickly. It was actually the opposite. It was the Pennsylvania State Police plane, a single-engine plane that went very slowly, and it left Pennsylvania. I think it actually had to stop 2 times to refuel, and it took a long time to get back to Idaho. Actually landed in Washington. So I then flew from Pennsylvania back to Idaho, was trying to figure out where this plane was going to land. We all assumed it was going to be Pullman Washington Airport, which is sort of the main airport for Pullman and Moscow. And so we were tracking it. It looked like it was going to Pullman. And then at the last second, it sort of turned, and we thought maybe it was going to Lewiston Airport. So I was there with my photographer and producer. We were waiting at Pullman Airport, and I was like, oh my God, I think it's actually going to Lewiston. I think it was Lewiston. I think that's where we thought. Anyway, so my producer started racing in that direction, but then it made another last minute turn and came back to Pullman, landed in Pullman. We ended up seeing Bryan Kohberger get off the plane, and this is where I'll pick up. This is interesting. This is what we now know from these police reports in Pullman that sort of document everything that happened. They actually called this Operation Turtle Shell, the operation to return Bryan Kohberger to Idaho, because he was wearing a ballistic shield and also a helmet, because they were concerned that someone might actually try to shoot him. And so because it was a helmet and a shield, I guess that's why they called it Operation Turtle Shell. And this is what it says. The Pennsylvania State Police will be transporting a high-priority inmate, Bryan Kohberger, via aircraft to the Moscow Pullman Regional Airport on January 3rd, 2023 at approximately 15:30 hours. Kohberger is currently in PSP custody per a warrant issued out of Latah County courts for the November 13th murders of 4 University of Idaho students. Due to his heightened awareness, the potential for unforeseen threats related to the transport of Mr. Kohberger, and the potential for information compromise due to media overwatch, Mr. Kohberger's transport has been deemed high risk. So because they deemed it high risk, that's why they had this whole plan. That's why he had the helmet. I wondered about the helmet and the shield and the vest that he was wearing. The Latah County Sheriff's Office is tasked with the safe transfer and transportation of Mr. Kohberger. And then it goes on to talk about all the plans they had in place. The team will position the vehicles near the aircrafts so that prisoner compartment doors are facing the aircraft exit, if possible, to provide cover and concealment. I remember when the plane pulled in, we were worried we weren't going to be able to get a picture of Kohberger because they really had it surrounded by cars and there was a hangar. Luckily, I mean, you guys know me, I was like running around up and down the fence. It was such a cold night. We ended up getting the shot of him in the helmet. But they said he was secured in a ballistic vest and helmet, placed into the prisoner compartment of the designated transport, and with the carrier helmet, belly chains, leg restraints with a key. So they had him all restrained, and then they go through all the protocol. They had a whole plan if anything went wrong, if anyone shot at the cars. They had tourniquet and first aid people ready. And they even had hospitals on standby, it looks like. So there was quite a plan. I remember I followed back to the Latah County Jail. There was a whole line of police cars that I followed. And then he finally went back to the Latah County Jail, where he was for quite some time until they moved the trial to Boise, to Ada County. He was then moved to the Ada County Jail. And now he is at the Idaho State Maximum Security Prison. He's in custody of the state of Idaho for the rest of his life, which gets me to my next thing that's new. You guys remember I toured the Idaho Max Security Prison where Kohberger is. Before the sentencing, I was granted a tour, about a 3-hour tour, very detailed. I have a whole YouTube video on that you can go back and watch. But I did not get to see the J block, which is where the death row inmates are, and it turns out that is where Kohberger is. I just got an update today from the prison. They say he's in the J block. J block is a unit that can house up to 128 individuals and includes populations in general population, protective custody, long-term restrictive housing, and death row. Incarcerated individuals in long-term restrictive housing live in single prison cells, are moved in restraints, and are provided showers every other day, along with 1 hour of outdoor recreation daily. They have access to religious services, communication through JPay, and can place commissary orders. So these pictures are pictures that I took inside the jail. And even though that wasn't J block, it's very similar to where Bryan Kohberger is. Basically, these prisoners are kept in individual cells. They only get to come out 1 hour a day. So they get all their meals in their cells. There's little door slitways that they can put the food through. So they stay in there 23 hours a day, and then 1 hour a day they get to leave to go to a recreation area, which sounds a lot nicer than it is. It's not like what you see in the movies where there's basketball courts and a whole running track or anything. It's actually an indoor area where just the top is open to the outside, and they even have fencing up there, but you can see the sun, and it's just a small area where they can go outside. And even in that area there's cages, I would call them, in that area where some prisoners don't even get to be totally free. In that area they're in these little cages just so they can see the sunlight, but they can barely move around. So that's their 1 hour of outdoor time. When they're in their cell, which is where they are all the rest of the time, they do have a tablet where they can do emails and listen to music, and they can have a TV. They buy a TV, but they never get to come out besides that 1 hour a day. There's really no social interaction. There was this common area with little almost phone booth looking, I call them cages again, where I'm told sometimes they would put inmates in there and have a couple in one room in different cages so that they could have some interaction. But I don't really see that happening with Kohberger right now. I think if he's in that death row area, he'll have to stay in the cell 23 hours a day. Again, he can use the tablet, which I know upset some people the last time I reported it. But just having been there, I mean, it's not a place that you would want to be. And that's where he will likely spend the rest of his life, probably in that J block. It's possible he can move to a different area. The warden, has said that, people who go to these prisons aren't so much judged on the crime that they committed. They, in a sense, start fresh within the prison system. If you have good behavior, you can get privileges. But just, people have said he has got a target on his back, Kohberger, that people want to injure him in the prison possibly. So my guess is they're going to keep him in segregation for a long time, maybe forever. So he's in the J block. And that's really the latest. As we continue to get more police reports, which we know that more will be released over time, there's going to be a ton that still comes from the court. The judge has said he wants to go through them all before he releases them and make sure the appeal window closes. So all that is still yet to happen. We're going to get a lot more reports. I'll continue to keep you guys updated. But that's pretty much it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. I'm really, trying hard with this podcast. So appreciate you guys. And sorry, it's like so late here. I'm actually in Providence, Rhode Island, working on a different story, but trying to keep on top of everything Kohberger too. So that's the update for today. And I'll see you guys later.